Hello everyone. Happy weekend. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining me in this week's video. As you can see, I once again pulled out the 48 Kuretake watercolor set, and I have prepped the maroon, the cherry blossom pink, and the rose madder. And I'm also using the lighter of the golds that I have, which I am putting on the paper straight away because you all know me. I tend to forget to use it, even though I want to use it. But it also gives the background of the colors a nice shine. I am still trying to get used to this new watercolor paper, which I started using last week. The Baohong cold pressed, I hope I say that correctly, cold pressed watercolor paper. And I really enjoyed it last week when I was working with it. So I want to get used to it a little bit more and work with it some more. I am fighting it here in the beginning. I forgot to wetten the back side of it, which would have helped with the curling, and I have to remember to do that next time because it was really giving me a hard time. It wants to curl up immediately when it gets wet, so yeah, I had a heck of a time keeping it straight. I also did not realize that I didn't turn the paper. So I'm actually working on the front side of the paper, which I am trying to avoid because the front side has a little bit too much texture for me. I'm worried about my pens having a hard time drawing over this rough texture, but the backside works really well. So I didn't realize that it was the front side I'm working on until I think I started working with the colored pencils, and I was trying to figure out why it was giving me such a hard time. Well, I turned the paper around and I noticed that the backside was a lot finer. So, note to self, I really have to make sure that I use the backside of this paper. Nevertheless, it turned out beautifully, and it is a good example for me to see what it looks like working on the front side. So I am not mad about it, and the pens worked out pretty okay, as you can see later on, but I think I still prefer working on the backside for what I do. If you are somebody that is seeking a lot of texture in your watercolor, by all means use the front side. I don't, so I just prefer to work on a slightly smoother surface. But the paper works like a charm. I really enjoy it. I did cut it down to size, which means I am used to working on the 6x9 size, and so this paper is a little bit bigger, and I just wanted to cut it down. I have worked with pinks before, and a lot of you really enjoy it. It's not my favorite color combination, but it does remind me of all the cherry blossoms in bloom and everything growing, and those bright pinks that I walk by on my walks just really inspired me for today's color palette. And I am also really excited that that maroon that I chose for the darker value really works out well. I was a little worried that it was going to be too brown, but when it combines with the two other pinks and the gold, it was just really, really pretty. I'm also adding a little bit more gold now because when I put it down first on the paper, it tends to disappear a little bit until it dries again, and then you can see the gold a little bit more. But for now, I'm just adding just a little bit more to that background. I'm also keeping the edges of the watercolor wet so that they can stay wispy and not cause any harsh lines. I am happy with how it looks now. This will give me a nice background to work with. And this is how it dried. You can really see it up close, how beautiful those colors dried. So now I'm just splattering some more gold and some more of that maroon on the page to give me a little bit more to work with as I'm starting to doodle. I figured I would work with my new gray Micron pens for this background because the colors dried so soft and gentle. I felt like the black fine liner pens would have been too harsh on that background, and I'm really glad I did. I'm still sad that I don't have a super fine pen nib in these grays, and I have looked and I can't find it. So if anyone has any lead as to where I can find the 005 nib in those gray Micron pens, I would really appreciate it. At this point, I want to say a quick thank you to everyone who answered the poll that I put up in my community post. I wanted to know how you all would feel about doing a live, and I know it is hard for people to tune in and watch it, and so I wanted to know, would people watch it live, or would people catch the replay? And a lot of you said that they would prefer to catch the replay, which I'm a replay viewer as well, and I totally understand that. The reason why I asked was because I know that when I speed up the footage, it is hard for people sometimes to follow along. And I do say, please just slow down the video if you need to, or pause it when you need to catch up, and if you want to follow along and do some of my doodles for yourself. But it is hard. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the footage that I am using, even for the doodling part here, I am not speeding up for this video. And I just want to test it out to see how people feel about it. I did have to cut out some repetitiveness, like when I do some of the rounding out of the corners, or when I do some lines, or when I do the dotting later, or when I make my pencil shadings. So as to not keep the video too long. Right now it's just under 30 minutes, and I think that's a good time for a video. But if this is not fast enough, please feel free to put me on 1.25 speed or whatever you need to make this go faster. I just want to cater to everyone, and it's hard when you do these videos because you just don't know. All of you have different preferences, but I haven't done a video in, you know, real speed in a long time, so I figured I would give those who like to take things a little bit slower a chance this time around. But I'm always open for suggestions or, you know, ideas, and I will try to accommodate people of different needs. I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this background. Part of me wanted to really lean into the cherry blossoms and just do maybe 3 or 4 big cherry blossoms on this background. But then I had splattered the gold on top and those darker spots, and they just needed to be embellished with their own little flowers. So I still have a flowery theme for this video, for this background, but yeah, I just wasn't sure what would work. But in all honesty, I really just like the randomness of these lines and not honing in to what seems most obvious, if that makes sense. I like to use the background colors and the splatters and use them for my doodling technique, and I just really enjoy doing that. I know it might seem repetitive to some people, but to me, every one of those backgrounds turns out different looking, even though I use similar techniques. And a lot of you seem happy about my choice of how I go about my backgrounds, and so I will continue to do it until I no longer feel it serves a purpose for me. But for now, I'm just enjoying the way I go about these paintings, and I am glad to hear that a lot of you do too. I cannot believe that I did not realize I was working on the front until about now, when I brought my colored pencils out and realized that it was giving me a bumpy look. I was trying to go in and get it more shaded, and I didn't feel like I was being very successful. And then I turned the paper around. I'm like, this feels different than last time. And I'm like, oh, That's why. And I almost didn't continue, but then I said, no, I really like where this is going, and it doesn't matter. And if anything else, it will be a good study and, you know, show me what my background looks like or my painting looks like with a rough textured paper. I'm also noticing that the gold that I put down seems to be a lot more shiny on this background, and I think it's because it's settling in all of those nooks and crannies. And if you move the paper, you can really catch that glimmer of that gold, and it's very pretty, but it also is a little bit difficult to work when the lights are shining on it and I can see that gold reflecting back at me. So that was different than when I worked on the back side of the paper. I started shading with the pencils because I needed to step away from doing lines. And once I took a break from making lines, I was then able to go back and add a little bit more lines here and there. And I do that sometimes. I also will go in and put my dots in before I get closer to the end, just to give my brain a little bit of a break and do something else, and to see where the painting is going. So if it seems like I am skipping back and forth, that is the reason why. I could have used my pens for these lines, but I decided to use the colored pencils just for, you know, a little bit of a different feel. You can't really tell at the end of the day that it was a different medium, but just for me personally, as I was working with it, again, it gave me a little bit of a break. And I am going to let you in on a little secret here. I really enjoyed these little cobblestones in this section very much. And as I am gonna go over the whole painting once it's done, I want you to tell me if you feel the same way. I like that I chose the lighter gray for them because I didn't want them to feel so dominant, but they're really soft and they kind of frame those flowers a little bit more, and I just really enjoyed them. So yeah, I am really happy that I brought them in. I wasn't sure what to do with these two corners, and when I have these gold shiny elements on the corners of my paintings, I tend to make them into flower petals, that kind of abstract flower petal type. I didn't want to do that here because I already had so many flowery details. So those cobblestones came to mind, and once I started using them, I was really, really excited with the way it looked. Watching this back in real speed just makes me want to speed it up for myself. So it takes a lot of patience for me to sit here and watch myself in real time. It's not easy to watch yourself back and knowing that you have to keep going over and over and over and view the same footage multiple times. So it takes a lot out of me not to speed through this process, because if I'm honest, once I'm done with it, I'm glad that it's over, and I'm glad that I can move on from a project. And I think maybe this is part of the reason why I don't work on a bigger scale, because when I have worked on a bigger scale, and I keep having to walk away from it. And when I do that, I start pulling out other projects that I work on, and then I forget to go back to it. And then it just sits in a corner or leans against the wall for what can sometimes be years, you guys, before I go back to it. And so I never feel like I'm able to finish a piece that way. And when I work on a smaller scale, I can finish a piece and I can be at peace with it, and I can put it to the side and move on and do something else. So yeah, I think that is also why I have gotten used to working on the 6x9, because even like an 8x10 or a slightly bigger size, I feel like I have to work on it so much longer, and it's also giving me more surface to doodle on, and the doodling process takes forever. So I really enjoy working on a smaller scale because I can finish it, and because I know I have to sit here and watch this multiple times. But I do it for you, and I do it for those of you who enjoy watching me in real time. I have pulled out my acrylic paints and my dotting tools, and now I am going to add some dots here and there, again to give my brain something else to think about. And when I get stuck on certain things, I just like to switch it up a little bit. Having to work on the rougher side of the paper also makes me realize that putting the dots down is a little bit tougher. They don't always turn out round, and that is because this paper has a lot more texture on the front than it does on the back. So that was another thing that I noticed. And even though I love this process here, I also don't want, for my own sake, don't want to feel like it is repetitive. So I'm trying to find new ways to put my dots down. I still love them so much that I don't want to not do them anymore, but I at the same time also want to find new ways to put my dots down. And so in an effort to not make everything look the same, I only dotted this little guy here and not the other one. I left it blank. And I'm also mixing it up with these flowers down here on the bottom, just to not make it look the same in all of my paintings, or in one painting specifically. I want you guys to have different things to look at and to explore. this video took a little bit later to be able to be released because when I looked at it again this morning, I thought that it needed a little bit more. I felt like those black dots leading up to this bigger one that I'm working on now were kind of standing alone, so I added some more on the opposite side of it. And I also added some more dots on that top corner, just to outline this pink in gold. And what else did I do? I did go over the flowers a little bit more because looking at it, I don't know if the ink of the paints had seeped into the paper more overnight, but they didn't stand out as much anymore and kind of got lost in the background. So I went ahead and outlined them a little bit more, as well as the ones that I did with the lighter gray. I just felt like it needed a little bit more, so I went over those. You will see it in the end, what I'm talking about now, but I just wanted to point it out right now so I don't forget, because it was an afterthought. The white that I'm using here is just diluted acrylic paint. I like it because it covers really well, but you can also use maybe gouache or something like that. I just have it on hand, and so that's why I use that. We are nearing the end of this video here. I'm just putting my final touches on it. Well, what I thought were final touches, and then I went in again and added some more this morning, but you will see that shortly here. I want to know what you think about this painting. For once, I really enjoyed it. Even though it is pink, I really like it. It calls out spring to me, and it is very feminine and very dainty, and I hope you liked it too. If you did, and if you made it all the way to the end of the video, why don't you leave me a little cherry blossom emoji so that I know that you made it all the way to the end. And with that, I am going to leave you here. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here with me, and I will see you next week.